You are listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy and Shelagh Maycheck.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with your hosts, myself, Kristy, and Shelagh Maycheck. This episode is a super special, spooky episode and features guest chef extraordinaire and real estate agent Prateek Singh.
Hey, guys. How's it going?
Welcome.
Thanks for having
His
me.
old fashions are to die for. But seriously, if you've had one, it will kill any other experience you can have anywhere else you go.
This is true.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's okay, fine, I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it. I'll take it.
And I want you to know, I had your, gosh, it must have been years ago, like 4 or 5 years ago or 6 years ago that you made me an old fashioned, and I just haven't been able to enjoy one since. Nope.
Aw.
Today we have to give the audience a special warning, okay? Because our topic is going to be discussing all things stigmas in real estate. We usually have an agent and a member of the public, but because of the content today, we only have a real estate agent. So that is one of 2 warnings you're going to get today. So stigmas, if you don't know what a stigma is, and I'm going to read this definition for you because I think it is the best way to kind of explain it.
Yeah.
It says that stigmas are defined as current or historical details of a property that may invoke an emotional response, causing a decrease in perceived value. These details typically do not include physical aspects of the home and may even involve geographical locations nearby. Spooky.
Some stigmas, here's a list. This is not all inclusive, but here's some common ones. Death, natural, accidental, or suicide. Violent acts or murder in or on the property. Criminal activity.
Ooh.
Proximity to sexual offenders. Gang affiliation of occupants or past occupants. Ghosts or paranormal activity. And proximity to graveyards and jails.
Ooh.
You never think about the jail one, unless you live in
Yeah.
Mission, I
That's-
guess.
Yeah.
That's so
Then
true.
it's like, oh,
That's
which
so
side
true.
of Mission?
Yeah.
But then you're in
Absolutely.
Mission, so maybe
It
that's
just
not.
looks like a nice winery, I swear.
Yeah. What's that castle up there? It's not
Yeah.
a castle.
Yeah.
Let's go for tasting.
Yeah. But for our audience, if any of these made you feel unsettled, totally good. This is your final content warning for this particular episode. Again, we don't have a member of the public on here because of that. So if this isn't your cup of tea, that's okay. So let's start spilling, shall we?
Ooh.
Shelagh, if you're buying a home, is there any stigmas that you want checked out ahead of time?
For me personally, if I'm buying, yeah, I want to know something weird happened there, something sinister. I would want to know.
Define weird and sinister.
If somebody I think was harmed on the home,
Ooh.
yeah, I would want to know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Fair
Yeah.
enough. And have you ever had the no feeling when inside a house?
Oh my gosh, yes. We were house hunting with you, and we were unfamiliar with the Lower Mainland area. We're trying to get the most bang for our buck, and we're like, let's look at this home in Aldergrove. It was vacant. We're like, great, we could move in right away. We go into the home. And it's just a weird feeling in there.
Yeah.
Walking around. We only went to the main level, looked around, and I think you opened the door to the basement.
Yeah.
And we all just kind of leaned in a little and went, no, we're done.
We're like,
good here.
we don't need to go down there.
We're good. No.
Wow.
Yeah.
It was just that
Yeah.
eerie feeling that you had from
Yeah.
just being there, right? I mean, it's the aura.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah.
And not everybody believes in that,
Yeah.
but that's why the conversation is so interesting
Yeah.
because everyone feels different about this stuff.
Yeah.
And Shelagh, have you ever had to ask an agent if a home was haunted before on behalf of one of our clients or yourself or?
Yes. I generally will get the client to specify what they want asked so I know I can put it in writing to the agent.
Right.
I've never yet had someone answer, yes, it's haunted.
There's still time.
Yeah.
There's always time for that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair. Do you believe in ghosts?
Not particularly, but I'd qualify myself as more of a spiritual person. So if I come into a place and I get kind of a bad vibe, or I feel like there's a weird energy in there, I'm gonna listen to it. and be like, I'll look for more things.
Oh.
I'll look for more things to validate my feelings.
So the ghost beacon goes up.
Yeah, the light flickers. Nope, I'm out. Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I've been really fortunate not to have any sales with regards to stigmas. Okay. But I did have a house hunter out once. I want to say it was last year. And we went into a home, and the home was good. Except we got to one of the kids' bedrooms, and you go in there, and there's this big Scarface poster above the bed.
Wow.
Fine. Nothing weird about that. But then you could kind of smell some things that might be a little more recreational. And then you find the blacked out can of bear mace hiding behind the TV. And the son works from home. Like, sure he does.
Yeah.
So I literally went downstairs and I looked at the agent and I was like, hey, I don't want my client shot in the driveway of this home. Like, is there something here that I need to be worried about?
Yeah.
Because gang affiliation is the thing. Sometimes you hear about people who have mistaken identity in cars, for example.
Yeah.
And we've even had situations even in Cloverdale in Surrey where someone was gunned down in their driveway and they were not the intended victim. It's horrific.
Yeah.
So that was a situation. And as for ghosts, guys, I'm 100% on board with this.
Yeah.
My grandfather was laying, in his bed, and he was near the end of his life, and we were in his care home. And my mom and my grandma and my dad were in the other room. And I'm talking to him, and he suddenly looks over, like past my shoulder, and he goes, Kristy, who's that man there? And there's nobody there. And I'm like, what?
Wow.
Yes. And I'm looking at him and I'm like, what does he look like? Because I want to know. I want to know what does he
Good
look
question.
like. Describe it to me.
Yeah.
Right. Is it a guy in a robe and a beard? Is it like something else? I don't know. Is it someone from his past? Maybe was it a family member coming to get him?
Right.
But I was like, somebody 100% is coming to get you. So I was like, oh, I said, I don't see him. What does he look like? And my grandpa literally stopped and shook his head. And he goes, oh, I must have fallen asleep for a second. And I was like, no. So
Wow.
I went into the next room and I was like, Mom and Dad, say goodbye. Because you just don't know.
Yeah.
But I 100% believe in that stuff because of that and other things.
Okay.
But that was my most probably recent reason for being like, ugh, there's another world.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
So those are my things. But we're going to, Prateek, we brought you in here for a reason. Just really quickly, you've got two really crazy talents that is worth sharing. Number one, you're an amazing chef. Like your passion for cooking and how good you are at it. We attended a party once. Do you remember this one?
Oh, yeah. Great get together. The Masterminds group. Oh, that was amazing.
Yes.
Good
And
times.
for dessert, we were going to make chocolate mousse.
Yeah.
And I wanted to add milk to a powder and stir it up, put it in the fridge. And
Sounds about right.
Prateek's like, I'll just make it from scratch. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like,
That's a thing.
yes. And he literally was like, it's so easy. I'll just make it from scratch. And I'm like,
I remember you said to me, aren't you a realtor?
yeah. Yeah. But you've been known to go home and flip your salmon halfway through the day. And the other thing you're really great at is your photography, which is a passion project of yours, but it's super cool. You do a really good job. And I think it's worth noting because you're a multi-talented man.
Oh, thank you. Oh, thanks for recognizing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Prateek, do you believe in ghosts?
Ooh, nope.
Okay.
Makes it easier for him to.
I was kind of leaning towards what Sheila was saying. I mean, I'm trying to get into the whole spiritual thing. I haven't really aligned my axis quite just yet, but
Yeah.
but I think with the ghosts, I don't know. It's been very cut and dry for me. It's like, hey, I mean, sure. Until I see it, I haven't had any close encounters or for the afterlife or I've been into haunted homes, many across the world, and I just, not a single goosebump, and I just walk out. I'm like, oh, well,
Like, yeah,
so much for
looks great in
fiction.
here. Here we go.
Yeah. So it hasn't happened yet, but hey, you never know.
There's still time.
There's still time. Yeah.
Would you ever
Yeah.
buy a home with any of the stigmas that we listed? Is there something in there that you're like, yeah, I'm okay with that one, or I'm not okay with this one?
It's a great question. There's two parts to it. If I'm living in it, as much as I say I don't believe in ghosts, depending on type of stigma, but it's hard to say if I'm going to live in it necessarily, but if it's an investment, absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you're good with other people living in it.
Yeah, pretty much. Tell you guys something. I have a great one, actually. No, I'm kidding. But
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it depends. It actually depends on what the stigma was. I mean,
Right.
stigma is so subjective. You know, it's if it's outside my comfort zone, I wouldn't. I mean, there's no right or wrong with that, to be
Yeah.
honest. And the good thing about stigma is it's not, it doesn't run with the course of the property. It runs with the ownership, and once you take ownership, it's hey. We're not going to pass. I mean, it's done with,
So it's like a new owner could change the story almost.
Yeah. You get to write your own story. It's your house, and it's a lot of people who take over these properties. They usually do a substantial reno, even if the property doesn't warrant any improvement, just because they want to start fresh slate, blank canvas, and hey, So and it works for a lot of people. So it's not so unorthodox.
Right.
But yeah.
Okay. I like that answer. I love it.
Yeah.
Have you ever been inside a house and it gives you like the no feeling?
Oh yeah.
Do you remember any instances where that's happened to you? And yeah.
I've been in. A funny thing is, I love older homes. Like I'm talking character homes, 100-year-old homes, and they usually have those old school true basements, low hang ceilings, 6.5 feet, 6 feet. I've still seen wooden stove. Anyways, I'm always curious what's behind something, right? When you go where the light only travels so far and they only have one light bulb.
Yeah.
So when you try to take and it's like, oh man, what's next?
So like a body.
headlamp.
Yeah. That's
I say like a body because he's like, you never know what's behind things.
Yeah.
Like,
quite the contrast.
oh, yeah. I went there.
You went there. But you certainly get this eerie feeling in certain homes, and and like both of you mentioned something, whether you smell a substance or something, somebody's living in there,
Right.
You'll get a pretty good read, and most people do. So it's not. So yes, I have numerous occasions.
Okay.
But
okay.
yeah.
Okay, that's good. It's such a good answer.
Yeah.
Because again, this is all subjective, right? Like you can't calculate at a dollar volume of an emotion, really.
Yeah.
I mean, people do. They
Yeah.
do it all the time. They'll say, no, I wouldn't pay more than X for this, or I wouldn't sell it for less than X of this because of these circumstances.
Yes. But sorry, I'll add one thing.
Yeah.
Culturally, for a lot of different cultures, that's where, superstitions and other stigmas follow.
Big time.
Right.
So that compounds, and immediately when you have a stigmatized property, the amount of demographics, like your audience is very limited.
Right.
So it becomes a hard sell just because of that notion alone.
Yeah.
So
That's a good point. So, yeah, and that's something that I don't think we were thinking about bringing up today, but stigmas and cultures.
Yeah.
I mean, we have situations where doors can't face a certain direction, or numbers can't be in a certain home, or the size of a lot, or shape of a lot.
Yeah.
And I remember the first time I ever heard about a stigma, I had a woman come to the house and, she said, oh, there's 3 points facing the home, so it was a little bit concerning. But
I'm a home number person.
Yeah.
Oh,
Home
yes.
numbers are important to me.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Mostly my mom, but
yeah.
things just get imprinted on
All
you and
placed,
you're done
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you discuss stigmas with your clients during the house listing or buying process?
It's a great question. Generally, I do, if it's brought to my knowledge. I mean, funny thing about stigmas are they're not a proactive disclosures, because a lot of times you don't even know if there was a stigma in the property.
Right.
Sometimes you have to do your own due diligence to see if there was something that something happened in the house that you want to share with your clients. But if I know something as by way of disclosure, absolutely, I'm sharing that with my clients. I mean, there's no reason not to.
Right.
Especially again if it's of cultural significance, or it's part of knowing your client and who you're working with. So yeah, I do.
We definitely we have that part of our buyer's questionnaire when we first meet people.
Little tick boxes.
Yes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
we want record. We want record of what they say,
Yes.
so that we know to ask. Because in all of Canada, there's no murder there's no murder disclosure law other than in Quebec.
Right.
So if there is a murder on a property, for example, you don't actually have to tell anyone.
Yeah. Right.
But of course, there comes the other side of it. Whereas if somebody asks you, you can't lie.
Yeah.
I think no, and gut feelings are super important. We had a set of clients where we went into a heritage home in Cloverdale, and we looked in the room and everything looked normal until you saw the dining room, because the dining room chandelier hung straight, but the whole room was slightly off. You know, so it looked a little creepy.
Wow.
Something's off in here.
Something's off in here. And then you go up the winding, twisting, little tiny staircase, and it's creaking the whole way up. And there's this little tiny door, like a little small one in the low ceilings. It had a little glass knob, which I love. And my client turns to me and he goes, "This is where they keep the children with their tongues cut out." And I was like,
my goodness.
Yeah, so of course we're not buying the house. Like, I know right there, I'm like, well, now we're
You're
just...
like, now it's done.
I would have just said, "Hey, I call it settlement."
Yeah.
The house is settling.
Oh my gosh, he was just like, and so, and in this home was underneath, just like you were talking about, where it's got kind of like a crawl or lowish portion. He just wouldn't go down there. He was like, no. And I'm like, okay, your wife and I will go check it out. But they were not going to buy the home. If there's a home with too much history, sometimes clients say, no, thank you. Right?
Yeah. Nope. That's fair.
I get it. And then, Prateek, I got to ask you, have you ever listed a stigmatized home?
Yes, I have less than half a dozen occasions, but I have listed and I've helped people purchase stigmatized properties as well.
Okay.
The listing is interesting because you really got to do your due diligence with who's coming through the door. You know, sometimes it's community, like where you list a property and the community knows about the history of the home and they become looky-loos and they become very inquisitive. It also creates cult following, and it gets very...
oh my God.
Never would have considered that.
I would never have thought about that.
A lot of people have nothing better to do but to speculate and just dabble and create stories. And it's a thing. I mean, it happens in states a lot, you know.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I never would have thought. I would in my head. I'm like, no, I wouldn't want. Say there's a wild crime scene, but you're right. You're gonna get those people.
It's like dark tourism.
Yes, like dark tourism who want to go see these places. Now I understand that people want to tour jail cells and stuff, and that's a lot of history behind that. But when there's something that happens in a neighborhood, that gets weird quick.
Yeah, and you know, gossip spreads around, and then people start looking at their own ways and trying to find, and so I have to it's hard. It's really hard to market those properties because you really have a very thorough vetting process with your colleagues, and then you ask your colleagues to verify and do their own due diligence, because again, with stigma, what are you going to share? You know, you still have to let your colleagues do their own due diligence, but I will make a resource for them to where they can go and find information if they choose to, because you want a clean offer. I mean, in the sense that you don't want anybody to find things after the fact and then just try to contest it. So it's just best to make some disclosures. But yeah, it is. Yes, I have, and they're not fun.
Have you ever been asked not to of course, so the laws of real estate and the rules of cooperation is that if, as a realtor, if you're asked a question, you can't be unlawful. Like you can't lie, basically. Okay? But you have to follow lawful direction from your clients. So if they say don't talk about it, you can't. So have you ever been told not to disclose something about a listing?
Yeah, fortunately not. Like I haven't been in a precarious circumstance where you know, I've got cooperation from everybody. You know, in fact, a couple times the sale was as a result of a stigma. It wasn't, you know, necessarily a past. You know, some with a history, so that resulted in people moving, and actually, in fact, a lot of times when the stigma or something happens of significance in the property, that just evokes or results in people making a move, and it's so fresh you can't. It's going to be there, you know. So people do usually disclose.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember once I was working at a hotel, and there was I got this no feeling from somebody who came in. And I ended up calling my husband, and I was like, he's in law enforcement. So I was like, I got a weird feeling. There was this guy, this is what happened. And he just said, he goes, I can't disclose this to you. He says, but Google it. And I was like, well, that's not good.
Oh, no.
I've done the same thing. Yeah, exactly.
Open source media. Right?
If I Google your name and nothing comes up, you're like, I'm boring. But I guess that's the alternatives. Maybe you don't want it to turn up all the time.
Totally.
Yeah. So in this situation, so say you do have a property with a stigma, and I'm going to ask both of you guys this question. I mean, Sheila and I work together, but I still like to hear her opinion on these things, just in case she has a different one than mine, and that's okay. So we'll start with you, Prateek. Would you ever feel bad selling a stigmatized property to a person who did not know the history of the home?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Guilt
yeah.
would get you.
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's. I guess we can talk legalities, but at the end of the day, there's a moral duty, a moral code that you follow.
Right.
Because you got to look at this person or family who's purchasing this place years down the road or during their ownership, they find out something bad happened. How's that going to make you feel? Worse, they'll say that when a disclosure wasn't made, even if you did things legally, but
Right.
sometimes you just take a proactive approach and just make that person informed. So yes, absolutely, yeah, I would, yeah.
Crazy. Okay,
Yeah.
and you?
Oh, 100%. I share. I would never myself want to find out a surprise
Yeah.
after. So it's easy for us because I know we have systems in place to ask people about it, but you just never know the buyer coming through your listing if they've been advised in that manner or to even consider it.
Yeah.
And that's the part that you represent your seller and everything else, but it's just you hope that everyone's done their research and all
This
their
is
due
like
diligence.
a treat people how you wish to be treated
big
scenario.
time.
Totally.
That theme
Yeah.
comes up a lot in
Yeah.
our podcast because
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
it is a core value
The
of
golden
ours.
rule.
Yeah.
The golden rule.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Disclose.
so say you've got a property listed with a stigma. How do you market it? Because it's not like you can't really put a for sale sign in the front, especially if it's high profile and like like what do you do?
Yeah, that's the first thing I do not do is put a for sale sign. I mean, it's negative publicity for the house, also negative publicity for me, because you don't want to get caught in the middle of some controversy and some media contacting you and trying to get some answers. But marketing is great. It's subtle. It's very subtle. So there's no rah-rah. There's no. I wouldn't really make video necessarily with the house.
Right.
Yeah.
Shaky camera like a horror film.
yeah,
Yeah.
totally
Yeah.
intent. But selective photos, and unfortunately, there's no way to window dress a house that it just has been through a lot.
Right.
Especially if it's a former crime scene, so to speak. You just want to be subtle, be respectful to the home itself and the owners,
Right.
and just like I said, to your colleagues, because lesser content often results in more inquiries because now people are even more inquisitive. Hey, wait a second, there's a bathroom photo missing. So in the one I did recently, I was on purpose it was missing because
Yeah, okay.
things happen, and so you just have to take it case by case, but it's very delicate. Like you just don't want to get into a whole lot of publicity.
Yeah,
And be gentle about it.
selective.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
selective. Yeah, depending who your audience is. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if there is something high profile, have you ever had like a media reach out to you for something like that? Like, is that something that happens where the media literally gets a hold of who's listed it and then?
Yeah. No, actually, no. Sorry, I want to say no. They have not.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, it was very close because I listed something within 12 hours. It was on all news outlets, and I was on the phone with the owners, the legal counsel, so to speak, and I was like, I don't want to get caught in the wind.
Yeah.
And so
it's
I
probably
had,
really polarizing for people
Yeah.
to see, so it's
Yeah.
gonna
Yeah.
generate.
Again, it's the emotional.
Yeah.
It's the emotional stigma. Like
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
emotions behind it.
Totally.
Yikes.
And so that time when that happened, I just absolutely went under the wraps for 48 hours and I just didn't do anything. I did put it on social media, but it wasn't like it was just a very subtle way. But
Right.
that post was shared through so many different community and including cult as
Oh,
well.
no.
And I was like, uh-oh. So
Wow.
I took that down. But you just don't know what you're up against. So you learn every time you go, and you just got to know your
Yeah.
audience and your market. But yeah.
Okay, so would if you were to sum it up, so say you've got another person, like I've never listed,
Yeah.
I've never done a stigmatized property before. I
Yeah.
would be open to it.
Yeah.
Obviously, depending on what the situation was, just like anybody would.
Yeah.
What would be like? I guess it would be know your audience. Is that the number one rule in
Yeah.
this situation? Like, be subtle, be respectful, know your audience.
Absolutely. I mean, know your audience is like know your clients, who you're selling it to, know the community that you're selling in. You want to give yourself enough time to do some outside diligence. That's not to do with the house, but it's to do with the neighborhood, to do with your neighbors. How much of it's been publicized in the past? How many people know about this and what you're up against? And then make an informed decision. How much do you want to talk about it? Like, you want to, the goal is to sell the property at the highest and the best dollar for the cellar. But I think, but most of the situations at that time, a lot of time emotions are high,
Right.
and the sellers themselves would know, and they would back you up, when whatever approach you're taking.
Right.
So far, I haven't had any major rebuttal on my marketing plan, and people just know that unfortunate circumstances happen, and they just have to move.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're really looking forward to the next direction at that point, because, like I said, it's very emotional for them to go
Yeah.
through something they've been through. But
Yeah, because that can be like a healing of a community too, right?
Yeah.
So if
Yeah.
new
Yeah.
people come in.
Yeah.
I was going to use a spooky word. I was going to say if new blood, but like you don't want to go there necessarily. But if
Yeah.
new people come in,
Yeah,
then
yeah.
that means that they could really change the tone, right?
Yeah.
They could change the tone of the place. They could change the feeling of the
100%.
neighborhood.
Yeah.
That's cool. Okay.
Yeah.
So final questions here. Prateek,
All right.
would you ever buy next to a graveyard?
But yeah, you know what? I would not.
Quiet neighbors, though.
Yeah.
Well-
I feel like it's getting more and more common for people to not want to do that.
Would you?
You know, it's funny. So in Vancouver, where I live, like there's a place in Riley Park, and that's the largest graveyard, but they have a massive retaining wall, and you wouldn't know what's behind it. And unfortunately for me, right across there's the most beautiful houses in a row, and I'm like, this is so unfortunate.
Yeah.
But the reason I would stay clear is because again, it's a preconceived notion that there's a taboo. They'll depreciate in value. They don't. So there's a whole different negative connotation.
Right.
And buying against that, and just on that pretense, I wouldn't. But as far as bothers me living in there, absolutely not. I love quiet neighbors. Yeah.
So I would
Yeah.
buy I love graveyards. I
Yeah.
think they're beautiful. I
Yeah.
love that they're like odes to people's
Yeah.
family. I like I the big pillars like Fort Langley, that graveyard,
Yeah.
New
Yeah.
West. Absolutely gorgeous. I love it. The history is there. It's like a tribute to that person's family, because at the end of the day, that is somebody there, and I
Yes.
think they deserve a spot on the earth too. I would definitely live in a home if it was for me. If it was for
Right.
resale value or an investment, I would think differently about that.
Exactly, yeah.
But if it was just for me to enjoy for myself,
Yeah.
I 100% would.
Yeah.
I could
Yeah.
see you
Yeah.
with the little teacup out just watching the mist in the
Yeah,
morning. And
talking to my friends.
Right.
Yeah.
It's always fall where Christy lives.
Yeah. And that's my favorite like season.
Yeah,
when the
I know, that's
spiders
what-
get big.
that's
And
why I
yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Halloween, right?
Yeah.
What is so it is Halloween. What is your favorite part of Halloween?
Ooh, actually, vicariously living through you because you do it up. No,
do.
I just love. I mean, I love the whole decorating, man. Like it's like being parties and I don't know. Like I just Halloween's fun to me. It's not spooky. I mean, I love if I don't get kids knocking on the door for trick or treat, but
Okay.
when I did, it was amazing because I would never be a treat. It would always be a trick, and they would be like, "Get out of here!" Like this. It's like, come on. But I can be a bit of a a-hole. But anyway.
That's amazing. I love it.
Yeah.
And so like you're like known around the neighborhood. You're like, don't go to that guy's house. Let's egg it.
Totally.
Yeah.
Totally.
The lights are off. Don't go
Lights
there.
are off.
Yeah. What about you? What's your favorite
kidding.
part of Halloween?
I love seeing the kids' costumes.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
a really creative costume that somebody has made or put together.
Right.
Not just like, oh, I bought it on Amazon, which is fine. It's great. But I love seeing something creative where it stops me in my tracks. I'm like, you're getting 2 pieces for sure.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, big bars.
I once had a little girl come up to me and she gave me a lemon and she's like, I'm life. And I was like, take this back,
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was very creative, and
Yeah.
her and her dad were going out, and I looked at him, and he was like, "She came up with it on her own," like kind of
Yeah.
like it. And I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you got your hands full with that one."
Yeah.
Drama.
My favorite part of Halloween is carving pumpkins. I love
say.
selecting a pumpkin and carving it up and putting it out there because people really, especially parents,
Yeah.
really appreciate if you go the extra mile for their kids at that time of year.
Right.
And I carve as many pumpkins as I can that I have time
Yeah.
for. So I'll have like 6 out there.
This is true.
I'll spend like $100 at the pumpkin patch.
Yes.
Like, and I don't carry them. That's what my husband's for.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
but I
Get
bring
the bucket, honey.
Yes, and so annual
Yeah.
tradition is I actually take Sheila to the pumpkin patch,
Yeah.
and we go pick out a
Aw,
pumpkin, and that's
nice.
something we do every
Or
year.
5 if they look sad.
Yeah, if they look like sad little pumpkins that won't get adopted, we
I
adopt
know.
them,
Aw.
carve them up real nice.
Yeah.
I love
What's the funniest costume you've ever been, or like the last costume you've been, or the funniest costume you've had, or
It was an R-rated costume.
Okay, got
but
it.
This is like when I was in my 20s. I'm
Yeah.
allowed to talk about
It's
that
already an
stuff?
explicit episode,
Oh, it
so
is?
feel
Okay.
free.
We do, yeah. You've been
It
warned.
was like I had one of those big wigs, and I had a orange jumpsuit on, and it was stupid. It was a Department of Erections, and I had a big dong
Okay.
hanging.
I never would have guessed.
Yeah.
Wow, you?
Yeah. Hey,
Really?
man. Yeah. Hey, outside a suit, I'm a person. Come on.
This is the best. I was so excited about doing this episode, and now I'm even more excited.
New
Truth is out.
information.
Yeah, I still have pictures.
That's,
That was pretty awful.
What about?
I actually had hair. Never mind. It wasn't a wig.
It was so curly.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I almost said something rude. I'm not gonna.
You
Yeah.
can't.
Like, no, we're glassing right. We're moving past that.
Yeah.
Sheila, what's your favorite costume or best costume you've seen? Or
I think the best one, or the most recent funny one, it's an 8-foot kangaroo where the person is the Joey. Like the little person in the
Right.
kangaroo pouch,
Yeah.
and you just
Right.
see this. It's an inflatable costume, so it's
Right.
quite large, and they're just walking down the street, and their tail's going, and don't expect to see it. Gets me every time.
so, my favorite one recently
Uh-huh.
was Sheila's husband, who dressed up as Marv from Home Alone, and he had the big wig and the iron
iron.
print on his
Wow.
forehead, and he
Yeah.
looked, and he had the fake crowbar, and he
yeah.
looked exactly like him.
That was
It was-
incredible. I remember that.
Yeah.
Actually, I saw that.
He went thrift shopping for the right kind of coat. He was dedicated. It's his
yeah.
favorite movie.
It's his
That's
favorite
awesome.
movie, and it was bang on. And what I'll do is when we post this episode, if we have
Yes.
anywhere I can put it in the comments, I'm 100% gonna, with his
Please.
permission,
It was
put it
great.
in the comments.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
incredible.
So that's about it. Basically, guys, not all sales are happy sales. Stigmas happen. It's very important that if you're taking a buyer out, you ask that buyer if they have any stigmas you want to ask about, because
Yeah.
it's not stuff you want to learn about later on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as an agent, of course, you're always doing the lawful instructions of your client, but also using a bit of your conscience at the same time.
Right.
So thank you so much, Prateek.
know.
I really appreciate you coming and talking about this super sensitive topic with us.
No, thank
Yeah.
you.
So now we'll clink our spirits together and cheers.
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 All right, guys.
Good job.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Spilling the Tea, a real estate podcast with Kristy Massero and Shelagh Maycheck.